Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Stihl MS660. Customer complaint that it bogs in the cut, lack of power. So we're going to start this repair out like we do any other repair. First thing, we're going to look in the fuel tank.
Got water in there.
Yeah, there's water in the tank. So that's not a good sign. It's not a lot of water, but it is one of our first clues as to what might be wrong with this saw. As with all the repairs, before I move any farther, I always make sure that the cylinder is clean. If it's got a scored cylinder, we're looking at a whole different type of repair, or possibly not a repair at all. Now, on a bigger saw like this, I'm sure we would end up fixing it, but on homeowner saws, not so much. It looks like the customer may have put a new spark plug in there recently. It's running a little rich, but that's fine on this saw. We're going to put that plug right back in. And you know, some people have been having a hard time getting spark plugs lately, so we're not throwing plugs at machines just for the sake of billing people. Alright, having looked it over once, we're going to give it a try and see if this thing runs or not. We're up to 6.
Bullshit detected. Take precautions.
So it farted on the 10th pull, which isn't uncommon for a brand new saw. No, I felt that was running a little bit lean. Just a little. But that was a wet carburetor that took 10 pulls to prime. So what direction are we going to go in on this repair? Well, you just saw me check the impulse line. We got a complaint of a bog on the top end, and we know we have water in the fuel. And it took 12 pulls to start this thing. That's way too much. And I thought it felt a little lean. Well, I guess the first thing I want to do is get that fuel out of the tank that's got the water in there. But what else am I going to look at? The impulse line that's possibly cracked or got a pinhole in it, or maybe it even came off and it's just running on a high level of fuel in the tank. Sometimes that happens. A plugged fuel filter will create a lean running condition, as well as a pinhole in a fuel line. So we are going to pressure test this fuel line and see if it'll hold 10 pounds of pressure or not. And in this case, it does. So that leaves us with carburetor issues. We could have a weak fuel pump, a stiff metering diaphragm, incorrect metering lever height, or the one I'm leaning towards is a blockage in the carburetor. And the reason I say I'm leaning towards that is that a lot of times when I find there's water in the fuel, I also find that there's scum in the micro screen in the carburetor. And every time I pull the carb off, I take a look inside and see what the piston skirt looks like on the intake side. This cylinder looks good. This is an older saw, it's probably got a bit of use on it, but everything looks really nice. With the carburetor part, we can take a look inside, and sure enough, there's that scum we were talking about earlier. I think the water mixing or trying to mix with oil, which doesn't happen, is what creates this scum inside a carburetor. So we're gonna go through and put a kit in this carb. I mean, we know it ran and it was reacting and responding properly. As far as any, what do I want to say? You know, I'm not worried about the high and the low speed jets being plugged or anything like that. It looks like the blockage was contained to that screen. The metering diaphragm here, it works, but I don't know how much longer it'll work, so we're going to put a new one in with the kit, and then the customer will get years of use back out of this. And along with the kit comes a new needle valve. I thought it'd be a good idea to zoom in on this, but this isn't really very good footage. We're just looking at pulling the metering lever out right now. There's the pin and the lever. And then we'll pull the needle valve itself out of here. Nothing special to see with that. And then we'll just put it all back together with a new needle. When you put the gaskets on here, always put the gasket down first and then the diaphragm on top of it. Seems to be a common mistake of people getting that wrong. And on some of these carbs, there's going to be a little notch in the metering diaphragm in that tin plate on there. That notch locks into the metering lever. It's interesting that the diaphragm that came out didn't have that little hook, and the one that I put in did have it. Here we're replacing the microscreen that was plugged up. This is where all the fuel passes through before it gets to the needle valve and into the carburetor. So it's like the last defense against dirt and debris getting into your carb, and they work pretty good. Unfortunately, because they're so fine, they plug up easy, and sometimes just the thinnest amount of scum maybe or dirt can block it and cause a lean condition. Luckily, this I think this happened fast on this one, and the customer was smart enough to know something wasn't right, and he brought it in because, you know, the cylinder looked good. I didn't see any scoring or evidence of lean running in there. So we got our throttle linkage put back together. Now I'm putting the fuel line on here. We'll be careful not to damage the fuel hose when we use the pliers to put it together. And then the boot that keeps the dirt out so you can still reach in and make your carburetor adjustments. We'll put that in place. And the handle, before I put the screw in on the handle, I like to do a little function check and make sure that everything's working the way it's supposed to. Otherwise, I'll be taking a screw back out again and doing it over. Get the rest of our intake parts put on. When we test run this thing, take note of how many pulls it takes to start this dry carburetor, as opposed to how many pulls it took to start it before the repair with a wet carburetor.
Bullshit level, DEFCON 5.
Yeah, stuff happens, right? So we're going to get some go-go juice in here and give her a shot. That's all I got for you on the Stihl MS660 Bogs under load. Thanks for watching. Later.